Captain Ho was drinking his morning coffee when the alarm started screaming. He was on the Lunar Defense Platform, a massive station that orbited the moon. The coffee spilled across his desk as he jumped to his feet. "What's happening?" he shouted into his communicator. "Sir, we have unknown ships entering the solar system," replied Lieutenant Bora from the control room. "Hundreds of them. They're not responding to our signals." Ho ran to the command center. Through the massive windows he could see them. The ships were enormous dark gray vessels that looked like floating mountains. They moved in perfect formation, silent and threatening. His hands started to shake, but he forced himself to stay calm. "Get me a connection to Earth Command," he ordered. Down on Earth, Dr. One was in her laboratory when her phone rang. She was a scientist who studied alien life, though until today she had never seen any real aliens. The voice on the phone was panicked. "Dr. One, you need to come to the United Nations building right now. We have a situation." She arrived 30 minutes later. The emergency room was filled with military officers and government officials from every country. Everyone looked scared. Admiral Wu, the commander of Earth's space forces, stood at the front of the room. "They sent us a message," he said, his voice tight. "Everyone needs to hear this." The lights dimmed. A holographic image appeared in the center of the room. The creature that appeared was tall and muscular, with gray skin and 4 arms. Its eyes were black and cold. When it spoke, a computer translated its words into every language. "I am High Sovereign of the Empire. We have conquered 47 star systems. Your system is now ours. You will surrender control of your planet within 72 hours. If you refuse, we will destroy your cities from orbit. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of fact." The message ended. The room exploded with noise. People were shouting, arguing, panicking. Dr. One felt her stomach twist with fear. She looked at the frozen image of and started analyzing what she could see. The alien's muscles were dense and powerful. Its bone structure suggested it came from a world with much stronger gravity than Earth. Its predator eyes told her it was used to hunting, used to winning. The Empire had conquered 47 worlds. Earth would be number 48. "We need to analyze their technology," she said, though her voice was lost in the noise. Admiral Wu called for silence. "We have 72 hours to decide. The United Nations will meet to discuss our response." Over the next 3 days, the world watched the skis with terror. The fleet sat at the edge of the solar system, waiting. Telescopes and satellites tracked every movement. Scientists tried to understand their technology. The shields were advanced. Their weapons used plasma energy that could burn through steel like paper. Captain Ho stayed at his post on the lunar platform. He watched the alien fleet and knew his small station would be useless in a real fight. His crew was scared. Some of them cried. Some wrote letters to their families. Ho himself sent a video message to his sister back in Seoul. "If something happens to me," he said into the camera, "tell Mom and Dad I love them. Tell them I did my duty." Dr. One worked without sleeping. She studied every piece of information about their ships were powerful. Their technology was centuries ahead of human science. But she noticed something interesting. In all their conquered worlds, the battles had been short. Species surrendered quickly when they saw the power. "They're used to easy victories," she told Admiral Wu. "They expect everyone to give up." "Can we fight them?" he asked. One looked at her data. The numbers were terrible. Earth's weapons would barely scratch the shields. Their ships could destroy entire cities in minutes. By every logical measure, resistance was suicide. "No," she admitted, "we can't fight them and win." The 72 hours passed quickly. The United Nations gathered representatives from every nation. The debate was fierce. Some argued for surrender to save lives. Others said surrender meant slavery. China, Russia, America, Korea, India, Brazil, all the nations argued their positions. Finally, the vote came. The Secretary General stood to announce the decision. The world held its breath. The message was broadcast to the fleet. High Sovereign received it in his command ship. He expected the usual words of surrender. Every species eventually said yes. Fear always won. But the human message was different. It was simple, just one word. No. Stared at the message. He called his officers to the bridge. Is this an error in translation? He asked. No, High Sovereign, replied his communications officer. The humans refused to surrender. Felt something he had not felt in years. Confusion. This makes no sense. They have seen our power. They know they cannot win. Why do they refuse? His tactical officer checked the data. Perhaps they do not understand the situation. Perhaps they need a demonstration. Nodded slowly. Very well. Find an uninhabited area on their planet. Destroy it completely. Show them what happens to those who defy the Empire. The order was given. A single warship moved closer to Earth. It positioned itself over the Pacific Ocean and identified a small, uninhabited island. The plasma cannons charged with a sound like thunder. Ho watched from the lunar platform. They're going to fire, he said quietly. The beam of energy shot down from space. It hit the island and everything disappeared in a flash of light. When the light faded, the island was gone. Just empty water remained, boiling and steaming. On Earth, people watched in horror. The message was clear. They could erase cities just as easily. Admiral Wu received urgent calls from governments around the world. Should we reconsider? They asked. Should we surrender now? He looked at Dr. One. She looked back at him. They both knew what the right answer should be. They both knew that logic said to surrender and save lives. But humans had never been good at following logic when they were angry. Send another message to the, Admiral Wu said. His voice was steady and cold. Tell them we said no. Tell them if they want Earth, they'll have to come and take it. Dr. One felt a chill run down her spine. She knew what this meant. War was coming. A war humanity could not win. High Sovereign received the second message. For the first time in his long military career, he felt a strange emotion. It might have been respect. It might have been annoyance. He was not sure. They truly refuse, he said to his officers. Very well, begin the invasion. Show these humans what happens to defiant prey. The fleet began moving toward Earth. War had begun. The first attack came 3 hours after humanity's second refusal. Captain Ho saw them coming on his radar screens. 20 warships, moving fast toward the lunar mining colonies. All defensive platforms prepare to engage, he ordered. His voice was calm, but his heart was racing. He had trained for combat his entire military career, but this was different. This was real. The lunar defense platforms opened fire with everything they had. Missiles streaked through space. Energy beams lit up the darkness. For a moment, Ho felt hope. Maybe they could win. Then the shields activated. The missiles exploded harmlessly against shimmering barriers. The energy beams scattered like light hitting a mirror. The ships did not even slow down. Shields are holding at 100%, reported Lieutenant Bora. She sounded terrified. Our weapons aren't doing anything. Keep firing, Ho commanded. Aim for the same spots. Maybe we can overwhelm their shields. But before they could try, they fired back. Blue plasma bolts hit the first defense platform. The structure exploded in a ball of fire. 16 people died in an instant. Platform 7 is gone, someone screamed over the radio. Ho gritted his teeth. All platforms, evasive maneuvers, don't give them easy targets. The battle was short and brutal. Within 20 minutes, 3 defense platforms were destroyed. The ships swept past the survivors and attacked the mining colonies. Ho could only watch as the colonies were bombarded. Buildings exploded. Domes shattered, exposing people to the vacuum of space. Retreat, he finally ordered. Fall back to the moon base. We can't stop them. On Earth, Dr. One watched the battle through satellite feeds. Her hands were pressed against her mouth. Tears ran down her face. Hundreds of people were dying up there, and she could do nothing to help them. "This is a massacre," said a general standing next to her. Admiral Wu entered the command room. His face was like stone. "We need new strategies. Our conventional weapons are useless against their shields." An engineer named Sungmin had been listening to the conversations. He was young, barely 30 years old, but he had a brilliant mind. He stepped forward nervously. "Sir, I have an idea," he said. "What if we don't use military weapons?" Everyone turned to look at him. Admiral Wu raised an eyebrow. "Explain." Sungmin pulled up a holographic display. "Our military weapons are designed to be efficient and controlled, but we have other tools: fusion reactors, asteroid mining lasers, industrial equipment. These things are powerful, just not meant for war." "You want to weaponize civilian technology?" asked Dr. One. "Yes," Sungmin said. "A mining laser designed to cut through asteroids could damage their shields if we modify it. A fusion reactor could be overloaded and used as a massive bomb. We can turn everything into a weapon." Admiral Wu considered this. It was desperate, it was dangerous, but humanity was desperate. "Do it," he ordered. "Coordinate with every space station and facility. If it can hurt, though, we use it." Meanwhile, a combat pilot named was having her own ideas. She was stationed at a military base in Korea, flying fighter spacecraft. She had watched her fellow pilots die in the first engagements. The ships were too strong, too fast. But notice something. The ships were careful. They avoided collisions. They moved in predictable patterns. They fought like they expected to win easily. She gathered her squadron in the briefing room. 10 pilots, all that remained from the original 50. "We can't beat them in a fair fight," she said. "So we don't fight fair. We use civilian ships, commercial transports, anything that looks harmless. We modify them with whatever weapons we can attach. Then we hit fast and run." A pilot named looked skeptical. "That's suicide." "Staying here is also suicide," replied. "At least this way we hurt them first." The squadron agreed. Within hours, they had commandeered civilian spacecraft from nearby spaceports. They attached mining lasers, welded missile pods to the hulls, and filled cargo bays with explosives. The ships looked ridiculous, but did not care about appearances. They continued their systematic attacks. They hit military bases first, then infrastructure, then major cities. Beijing was bombarded. Moscow burned. New York was evacuated as ships approached. But humanity was fighting back in strange ways. A commercial transport ship, apparently fleeing the battle zone, suddenly accelerated toward a cruiser. Before they could react, the transport rammed directly into their shield. The impact did not break the shield, but it disrupted it for 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, Earth's defense satellites fired everything they had at that one spot. The shield flickered and failed. Missiles struck the cruiser's hull. It did not destroy the ship, but it damaged it. The cruiser had to retreat for repairs. It was the first time a ship had been forced to retreat. High Sovereign was not pleased. "One ship damaged," he said to his officers. "Unacceptable. Increase the attack intensity." But more surprises came. In Seoul, a cyber warfare specialist named was working in an underground bunker. She was a hacker, one of the best. She had been trying to break into communications since the war started. "I'm in," she suddenly announced. Her team gathered around her screen, had found a weakness in the communication network. It was not much, just enough to listen to their messages. But listening meant understanding their plans. "They're planning to hit Tokyo next," she said, "in 4 hours." The information was passed to Admiral Wu. 4 hours was not much time, but it was enough. Tokyo was evacuated. When the ships arrived, the city was empty. They bombed empty buildings while the population hid in underground shelters. They had wasted ammunition and time on a useless target. Guerrilla Squadron struck next. They had been tracking a supply ship, something that looked less defended than the warships. They attacked from 3 directions, using the modified civilian craft. Their weapons were weak, but they targeted the same spot on the shield again and again. The supply ship's shield finally broke. Ship fired its remaining missiles directly into the ship's engines. The supply ship exploded in a brilliant flash. "We got one," shouted over the radio. "Don't celebrate yet," said. "Get out of here before reinforcements arrive." The squadron scattered, disappearing into the debris field around Earth's orbit. High Sovereign received the report of the destroyed supply ship. He stared at the data with growing frustration. This was taking too long. The humans should have surrendered by now. Every other species had surrendered within days of seeing power. "Why do they keep fighting?" he asked his tactical officer. The officer had no answer. None of them understood. In their experience, weaker species always submitted to stronger ones. It was logical, it was natural, but humans were not being logical. Captain Ho had regrouped his forces at the main lunar base. He had 43 people left from his original crew of 200. They were exhausted, traumatized, but still fighting. "Sir, we received new equipment from Earth," reported Bora. "Industrial mining lasers modified for combat." Ho looked at the equipment. It was crude, ugly, and probably dangerous to use, but it was better than nothing. "Install them on the remaining platforms," he ordered. "Next time they come, we'll be ready." Down on Earth, Sung Min's project was expanding. Factories that once built cars now built weapons. Civilians volunteered by the millions to help. An old man who had been a factory worker gave Sung Min an idea. "What if we use kinetic weapons?" the man suggested. "Just throw things at them really fast. Rocks, metal, anything." Sung Min's eyes widened. It was primitive, almost stupid. But it might work. The shields were designed to stop energy weapons and explosives. Nobody used simple kinetic projectiles anymore because they were considered outdated. "Start building," Sung Min ordered his team. "Big ones, we're going to throw metal at them." 1 month into the war, humanity was still losing. 50 major cities had been damaged or destroyed. Millions were dead. They controlled most of near-Earth space. But the alien forces had also taken casualties. 3 warships damaged, 2 supply ships destroyed, and countless small victories by human guerrilla forces. High Sovereign looked at the casualty reports and felt something he had never felt in conquest before: doubt. This war should have ended in days. Instead, it was dragging on. The humans were like insects, weak individually but overwhelming in their refusal to stop. "Request reinforcements from he finally ordered. "We need more ships to finish this." His officers looked shocked. They had never needed reinforcements before, but did not care about pride anymore. He just wanted this war to end. 3 months into the war, Earth looked like a different planet. Smoke rose from ruined cities. Orbital space was filled with debris from destroyed ships. But humanity had not surrendered. Instead, something remarkable was happening. They were learning. Dr. One stood in a laboratory deep underground, examining pieces of a destroyed ship. Her team had been studying the alien technology day and night. They were exhausted, running on caffeine and determination. "The shield generator uses a crystalline matrix," she explained to the engineers surrounding her. "It creates an energy field that disperses incoming fire. But look at this." She pointed to a damaged section of the shield generator. There was a crack, small but significant. "This damage wasn't from our energy weapons," she continued. "This came from debris impact, a piece of metal moving at high velocity." Sung Min leaned closer, studying the crack. His eyes went wide with understanding. "Their shields are optimized for energy weapons. They're not designed to handle simple kinetic impacts." "Exactly," one said. They've been fighting advanced civilizations for so long, they forgot to defend against primitive weapons. This information was immediately sent to Admiral Wu. Within hours, every factory on Earth received new orders. Stop making fancy energy weapons. Start making Gauss cannons and simple metal projectiles. Captain Ho was one of the first to receive the new weapons. His lunar base now had 3 massive devices that used electromagnetic force to launch metal slugs at incredible speeds. They looked ancient compared to laser weapons, but Ho was willing to try anything. The next attack came 2 days later. 5 warships approached the lunar base, expecting easy prey. Ho waited until they were close. "Fire," he ordered calmly. 3 metal slugs, each weighing several tons, shot through space faster than bullets. The shields activated automatically. The shields dispersed energy beautifully, just as designed. But the metal slugs were not energy. They were solid matter moving at enormous velocity. The shields flickered, trying to adapt. They slowed the slugs down but could not stop them completely. 2 slugs missed. The third hit a warship directly in the center. The shield failed. The slug punched through the hull like paper. The warship shuddered and began venting atmosphere. "We hurt them," Lieutenant Bora whispered in amazement. "We actually hurt them." The warship retreated, limping away from the battle. The other 4 ships continued their attack, but they were more cautious now. They kept their distance from the... Ho smiled grimly. "Reload and fire again. Let's send them all running." On Earth, a former construction worker named Wu was having his own moment of discovery. His crew had been trapped in a bombed city when ground forces landed. The aliens had established a garrison, using it as a base to control the region. Wu and his crew hid in the ruins, watching the soldiers patrol the streets. The aliens were huge, nearly 8 feet tall, with armor that made them look invincible. But Wu had worked construction for 20 years. He knew buildings. He knew structures. "We can't fight them directly," he told his crew, "but we can collapse buildings on them." They spent a week preparing. They identified the buildings around the garrison that were already damaged. They placed industrial explosives at key structural points. They calculated angles and timing. When they were ready, Wu pressed the detonator. 4 buildings collapsed simultaneously, falling inward toward the garrison. Thousands of tons of concrete and steel rained down on the aliens. The shields could stop plasma bolts and missiles. They could not stop buildings. Half the garrison was buried under rubble. The survivors retreated in confusion. Wu's crew emerged from hiding, whooping with victory. It was not a major military victory, but it proved something important. They could be beaten. You just had to be creative. Stories like this spread across Earth. Humanity began adapting their tactics. They used their own expectations against them. The aliens expected advanced weapons, so humans used primitive ones. The aliens expected direct combat, so humans used ambushes and traps. Guerrilla Squadron had grown from 10 ships to 50. They struck fast, using hit-and-run tactics. They would attack, cause damage, then disappear before reinforcements arrived. Her ships were ugly, cobbled together from spare parts, but they were effective. During one raid, her squadron discovered something interesting. The ships all used the same communication frequency. The cyber warfare specialist had suspected this. Now it was confirmed. "If they all use the same frequency," explained to Admiral Wu, "we can jam it, blind them, make their coordination impossible." She built a device that could broadcast noise on the frequency. It was crude and used massive amounts of power, but it worked. When activated, ships could not communicate with each other. They became isolated, confused. The first test was during a major battle in orbit around Earth. 20 ships were attacking a defense station, activated her jammer. Suddenly, the formation fell apart. Ships stopped coordinating. Some fired at empty space because they thought their sensors were malfunctioning. Earth's forces pressed the advantage, fired while they were confused. 3 ships were damaged badly. The rest retreated in disorder. High Sovereign watched this battle from his command ship. He felt something unfamiliar growing inside him. It might have been worry. It might have been fear. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. "They are primitives. They should not be able to adapt this quickly." His science officer studied the data. "High Sovereign, I think we have made an error. We assumed humans were like other species, but their biology is different. They are incredibly adaptable." "What do you mean?" asked. "Most species evolve for specific environments. They specialize. Humans evolved on a planet with extreme diversity. Hot deserts, frozen tundras, jungles, mountains. They learn to adapt to everything. It is in their nature." Absorb this information. It meant the humans would keep learning, keep adapting, keep finding new ways to fight. This war would not end quickly. "Send for more reinforcements," he ordered. "Double our fleet strength." Meanwhile, a trauma surgeon named Jin was making her own discoveries. She worked in a hospital that treated wounded soldiers. Many had been injured fighting ground forces. She saw the wounds up close. "Their weapons cause terrible damage," she told Dr. One during a rare meeting. "But I noticed something. When we hit them, they keep fighting, even with severe injuries." "They have redundant organs," one explained. "Multiple hearts, backup lungs. They're very difficult to kill." "I know," Jin said, "but I examined a dead soldier. Their redundant organs make them confident, too confident. They don't protect their central nervous system as well as they should. Their spinal column has a weak point right at the base of the skull." One understood immediately. One precise strike there would paralyze them. "Or kill them," Jin confirmed. "We need to train our soldiers to target that spot." This information was distributed to every military unit. Soldiers began training specifically to exploit this weakness. When fighting ground forces, aim for the base of the skull. It was not easy. They were fast and strong, but it gave humanity a fighting chance. 6 months into the war, the tide was beginning to turn. Not dramatically, not obviously, but the shift was there. Humanity was losing fewer battles. They were learning from every defeat. Their weapons were improving. Admiral Wu had a bold new plan. He called a meeting of his top officers. "We've been fighting defensively," he said. "We need to take the fight to them, hit their supply lines, attack their staging areas." "We don't have enough ships for offensive operations," an officer objected. "Then we build them," Wu replied. "Sung Min, can we retrofit civilian ships for combat?" Sung Min nodded. "We've been doing it already, but on a small scale. If we do it on a large scale, we could have a fleet ready in 2 months." "Do it," Wu ordered. The plan was risky. It meant converting merchant ships, cargo haulers, even luxury cruise ships into warships. It meant taking civilian volunteers and training them for combat. But Earth had millions of volunteers. People wanted to fight back. Captain Ho volunteered to lead the first offensive strike. He had been fighting from the lunar base for 6 months. He was tired, but he was also angry. They had killed too many of his friends. It was time for revenge. His target was a refueling station in the asteroid belt. Intelligence suggested it was lightly defended. If they could destroy it, the fleet would have fuel problems. Ho's strike force consisted of 12 ships. Most were converted civilian vessels. They looked ridiculous, painted in commercial colors with weapons welded to their hulls. But they had jammers and a crew that was angry. They approached the refueling station quietly, pretending to be debris. The sensors detected them too late. Ho's ships opened fire from close range. Slugs tore through the station's shields. Explosives destroyed the fuel tanks. The entire station went up in a massive explosion. Ho's ships escaped with no casualties. "Tell Admiral Wu," Ho radioed back to Earth. "The first strike was successful. We're ready for more." Back on the command ship, High Sovereign received the report of the destroyed refueling station. He stared at the data, his four hands clenching into fists. This was supposed to be simple. Humans were supposed to be easy prey. Instead, they were becoming hunters. They were striking back. They were winning battles. For the first time in his long career, wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. Perhaps Earth should have been avoided. Perhaps these humans were different from any species he had encountered before. But it was too late for doubts. The war was committed. One side would win. One side would lose. Just hoped it would be the humans who lost. Deep down, though, he was no longer certain. 9 months into the war, humanity had transformed. The scared, desperate species that had faced annihilation was gone. In its place was something harder, angrier, and far more dangerous. Admiral Wu stood in the command center, looking at the strategic map. Red markers showed positions. Blue markers showed human forces. For the first time since the war began, there were more blue markers than red in some sectors. "They are retreating from the outer asteroid belt," reported an officer. "They've consolidated their forces closer to Jupiter." Wu nodded. "They're defensive now. They know we can hurt them." Sungmin entered the room carrying data tablets. He looked excited. "Admiral, we've finished the new ships. 30 warships, all equipped with our latest weapons. Kinetic missiles and the new shield disruption technology." "Shield disruption?" Wu asked. "Dr. One's team figured it out," Sungmin explained. "The shields operate on a specific frequency. We built emitters that can make the shields unstable. It only lasts a few seconds, but that's enough for our weapons to get through." This was the breakthrough they needed. Wu began planning a major offensive, not just small raids anymore, a real battle to take back control of human space. But first, they needed better intelligence on positions. That's where came in. The cyber warfare specialist had been getting better at hacking systems. She could now access their communications regularly. "I found something big," told Wu during a briefing. "The flagship is going to be near Mars next week. It's their command ship. If we could capture it, we'd have access to all their military data," Wu finished. His eyes gleamed. Navigation data, troop positions, maybe even the locations of their conquered worlds. The plan was audacious, maybe insane. Attack the flagship, the most heavily defended ship in their fleet. But if they succeeded, the rewards would be enormous. Captain Ho volunteered immediately. "My ships have the most combat experience," he said. "Let me lead the strike." And her squadron also volunteered. "We're good at hit and run," she added. "We can distract their defenses while the main force hits the flagship." Admiral Wu spent 3 days planning every detail. They would use multiple tactics simultaneously: jammers to disrupt communications, shield disruptors to weaken their defenses, for maximum damage, and a specially modified ship designed to latch onto the flagship and deploy boarding teams. The battle would happen in Mars orbit. Wu chose the location carefully. Mars had a massive debris field from old mining operations. Human ships could hide there, strike from concealment. The week passed quickly. Human forces gathered near Mars, staying hidden among the debris. Ho's 30 warships formed the main attack force. 50 guerrilla ships would provide support, and Admiral Wu himself would command from a converted carrier. The flagship arrived on schedule. It was enormous, 5 times larger than any human ship. High Sovereign was aboard, inspecting his forces. He did not know that humans were watching. "All units prepare to engage," Wu ordered. "Remember, our goal is to disable the flagship, not destroy it. We want it intact." Squadron attacked first, screaming out of the debris field. They fired wildly, drawing attention. The fleet responded immediately, turning to face this threat. That's when Ho's main force struck from the opposite direction. 30 warships, firing in perfect coordination. They launched hundreds of metal slugs. Shield disruptors made the defenses flicker and fail. Kinetic missiles slammed into cruisers. The battle was chaos. Ships exploded. Debris flew everywhere. Forces tried to coordinate, but jammers disrupted their communications. They could not fight as a unified fleet. High Sovereign watched his tactical display with growing horror. The humans had learned too much. They were fighting like a professional military now, using advanced tactics and coordination. "All ships protect the flagship," he ordered. "Do not let them." An explosion rocked the command ship. A human slug had penetrated the shields. The flagship's engine stuttered. It began listing to one side. "Engines at 40%, reported an officer. "We are losing power." Ho saw the opening. "Boarding ship, go now." A specially modified transport ship broke from the formation. It was small and fast, designed for one purpose. It accelerated toward the crippled flagship, dodging enemy fire. Point defense guns tried to shoot it down, but the ship's armor held. The transport slammed into the flagship's hull and latched on with magnetic clamps. Cutting lasers burned through the armor. Within minutes, a hole was open. Human soldiers poured into the flagship. They were led by a Marine named Ben, a veteran who had been fighting ground forces for months. She knew how to kill them efficiently. "Remember your training," she told her team over the radio. "Aim for the base of the skull, move fast, don't give them time to coordinate." The boarding team fought through the flagship's corridors. Soldiers were tough and strong, but the humans were prepared. They used the aliens' confidence against them. When it charged forward, expecting to overpower the smaller humans, they were met with precise shots to their weak point. Ben's team reached the bridge in 20 minutes. High Sovereign was there, surrounded by his officers. He looked at the humans with something like disbelief. "How?" he asked in heavily accented human language. "How did prey become predators?" "We were never prey," Ben replied, aiming her weapon at him. "We were just waiting for you to realize that." Tried to fight, but it was useless. His officers were already dead or captured. The bridge was secured. The flagship was in human hands. Outside, the battle was ending. Ships retreated, scattered and confused. They had lost their flagship and their commander. The humans had won a major victory. Admiral Wu allowed himself a small smile. "Secure all data from the flagship. Every file, every map, every communication record." Dr. One's team was brought aboard to examine the computer systems. What they found was incredible. Navigation charts to all 47 conquered systems, military deployment data, communication protocols, everything. "This is beyond valuable," one told Wu. "With this information, we can contact the other conquered species. We can coordinate with them. We might even be able to start rebellions." One file particularly interested them. It was a report on the 47 conquered worlds. Most had surrendered within days. Some had fought for a few weeks before giving up. All had accepted rule eventually. Except one, a species called that had resisted for almost 2 months. The report noted that they were stubborn but ultimately followed logic and surrendered when faced with certain defeat. 2 months, said, reading the report. That was their record for longest resistance. "We've been fighting for 9 months, Ho added, "and we're not done yet." Wu made a decision that would change the war. Use the communication system. Send messages to all 47 conquered worlds. Tell them that humanity is fighting back. Tell them they can fight too. Tell them the Empire can be beaten. And her team began broadcasting immediately. They sent messages in every language they could translate. The messages were simple but powerful. "The told you resistance was useless. They lied. Humanity is fighting. Humanity is winning. You can too. Rise up, fight back. Freedom is possible." The messages reached species that had been enslaved for years. Some dismissed it as propaganda, but others began to hope. If humans could fight them, maybe they could too. On a planet called Prime, a rebellion started 3 days after receiving the human message. Workers stopped production. Soldiers deserted. Within a week, the entire planet was in open revolt against occupation. The same pattern repeated on other worlds. Small resistances grew into larger rebellions. The empire, which had seemed invincible, began to crack. High Sovereign, now a prisoner on Earth, watched reports of the rebellions. He was kept in a secure facility, treated humanely but firmly. "You have destroyed my empire," he said to Admiral Wu during an interrogation. "We defended ourselves," Wu replied. "You came to conquer us. You expected easy victory. You were wrong." "Why?" asked. "Why did you not surrender? Every logical species surrenders when facing superior force." Wu considered the question carefully. "Because logic isn't everything. Because freedom matters more than survival. Because we decided we would rather die fighting than live as slaves." Could not understand this. His species had always valued strength and logic. Emotion was weakness. But humans used emotion as strength. They fought not because they could win, but because they refused to lose. Captain Ho was given command of humanity's first FTL-capable strike force. Using captured technology, human engineers had built ships that could travel faster than light. It was crude, unstable, and sometimes dangerous. But it worked. "We're going to hit a staging base in Alpha," Wu told Ho. "Show them that nowhere is safe. Show them that humans can strike anywhere." Ho's fleet jumped to FTL, traveling beyond the solar system for the first time. When they arrived at Alpha, they found a large military base. It was unprepared for attack. Why would it be? No conquered species had ever attacked territory before. Ho's ships destroyed the base in 30 minutes. Every ship was disabled or destroyed. Every facility was bombed. When they were done, Ho sent a message back to the remaining forces. "This is Captain Ho of Earth. We're coming for you. Nowhere is safe. Surrender now or face extinction." The message was received by commanders across multiple systems. For the first time in their empire's history, they felt fear. 1 year after first contact, the war had become something they never expected. A rebellion spanning 47 star systems. Human fleets striking deep into territory. An empire that had stood for centuries crumbling under the weight of its own arrogance. Admiral Wu stood before the United Nations Assembly. Representatives from every nation, along with delegates from 3 liberated alien species, filled the chamber. The mood was tense but hopeful. "The empire is collapsing," Wu announced. "Their military is scattered. Their conquered worlds are in open revolt, but the war is not over. The remains. As long as their central government exists, they can rebuild." A delegate stood up. His species had been enslaved for 5 years before the human messages sparked their rebellion. "What are you proposing, Admiral?" "We strike at the heart," Wu said firmly. "We take the fight to there. We force them to surrender completely." The chamber erupted in debate. Some argued for mercy. Others wanted total victory. Dr. One watched the arguments and felt exhausted. She had worked for a year straight, barely sleeping, helping humanity understand and defeat the. Now they were talking about invading an alien planet. "We should offer them terms," she said when called upon to speak. "Not all support the war. There are civilians there, families, children." "They showed us no mercy," a general argued. "They destroyed 50 of our cities." "And if we become like them," one replied, "then what did we fight for?" The debate continued for hours. Finally, a compromise was reached. They would invade but the goal was to force surrender, not genocide. Civilian areas would be avoided. The target was military installations and the government centers. Captain Ho was given command of the invasion fleet. It was the largest force humanity had ever assembled. 80 warships, 30 support vessels, and contingents from 6 liberated alien species who wanted revenge on the. Led the fighter squadrons. Sung Min oversaw the technical teams that would disable defenses, prepared cyberattacks to cripple their communications. Everyone had a role to play. The journey to the took 2 weeks. During that time, Ho walked through his ship, talking to the crew. Many were young, barely out of their teens. They had grown up during the war, had lost family and friends to attacks. "Are you scared?" a young soldier named asked him. "Terrified," Ho admitted. "But we do this anyway. That's what being human means. Doing what's necessary even when we're afraid." They appeared on their sensors. It was a massive planet, twice the size of Earth, with 4 small moons. Orbital defenses surrounded it like a shell. Hundreds of defense platforms, thousands of automated weapons, and at least 50 warships. "They know we're coming," observed. "This is going to be brutal." Admiral Wu had planned for this. The attack would come in waves. First, a cyber attack to disable communications. Then long-range bombardment to take out defenses. Finally, the main fleet would push through and deploy ground forces. "Begin the operation," Wu ordered from his command ship in orbit around a nearby moon. Activated her programs. They had been building these cyber weapons for months, specifically designed to attack systems. The attacks spread through the network like a virus, shutting down communication nodes, corrupting targeting data, creating chaos. The defenses went dark for 45 seconds. It was enough. Ho's fleet opened fire. Thousands of rounds streaked through space. Without proper coordination, the defenses could not respond effectively. Defense platforms exploded. Warships scrambled to activate their shields but were too slow. "Push forward," Ho commanded. "Get inside their defensive perimeter." The fleet accelerated, dodging return fire. Some human ships were hit and destroyed, but most made it through. They established orbit around the and prepared for the next phase. On the surface of the panic was spreading. The population had been told the Empire was invincible. Now they watched human ships in their skis, bombing military installations. Their entire worldview was shattering. The government center was a massive complex in their capital city. The leadership had gathered there, trying to coordinate a defense. But with communications disrupted and their fleet scattered, they had few options. Wu led one of the ground assault teams. The former construction worker was now a lieutenant, commanding 50 soldiers. Their mission was to secure the government center. "Remember," he told his team as they loaded into drop ships, "we're not here to kill everyone. We're here to force surrender. Only shoot if they fight back." The drop ships descended through the atmosphere. Fighters tried to intercept them, but squadrons kept them busy. Most of the landing force made it to the surface. The fighting in the capital was intense but brief. Soldiers fought with desperate courage, but they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. Human tactics had evolved over a year of constant warfare. They knew every weakness, every tactical error the aliens typically made. Wu's team reached the government complex. The building was massive, designed to impress and intimidate. But it was also designed to withstand attacks from energy weapons, not from the industrial explosives Wu's team carried. "Place charges on the structural supports," he ordered. "We bring down the outer walls, force them to evacuate to the inner chambers." The explosions were precise and controlled. The outer defenses collapsed, but the inner structure remained intact. Officials had no choice but to retreat deeper into the complex. Inside, a young named Kelvin was experiencing something he had never felt before: true fear. He was a low-level bureaucrat, not a warrior. He had believed in the Empire's strength all his life. Now humans were literally knocking down the walls of his government. "We should surrender," he said to his superiors. "We cannot win this." "Silence," commanded an old general. "The Empire does not surrender." But the general's words rang hollow. Everyone could hear the explosions outside. Everyone knew the truth. The Empire was falling. On the orbital command ship, Admiral Wu received reports from all fronts. The battle was going well. Orbital defenses were destroyed. Ground forces had secured key positions. The government was cornered. "Send them a surrender demand," he ordered. The message was broadcast across every channel. "To the government, you have lost this war. Your empire is gone. Your conquered worlds are free. Surrender now and we will negotiate fair terms. Continue fighting and we will be forced to continue destroying your military capacity." In the government complex, the leadership received the message. They looked at each other, these proud warriors who had never lost a war. The shame of surrender weighed on them like a physical burden. But they also saw reality. Continuing would only lead to more death. The empire was gone. It was time to accept that. The ranking official, an old named, made the decision. "Send a reply. We will negotiate surrender terms." Across the fighting stopped. Soldiers laid down their weapons. The war was over. 3 days later, Dr. One stood in the government complex, now serving as humanity's chief negotiator. Across from her sat the surviving leadership. They looked defeated, broken. "These are our terms," one said, reading from a document prepared by the United Nations. "All conquered worlds will be granted full independence. The military will be reduced to a defensive force only. War crimes will be investigated and prosecuted. The empire as it existed is dissolved. In return, we will help rebuild your economy and establish diplomatic relations." Listen to the terms. They were harsh but not cruel. The humans could have demanded total subjugation. Instead, they offered a path to redemption. "Why?" he asked. "Why show us mercy?" One thought about all the destruction, all the death, all the suffering. She thought about the 50 destroyed cities on Earth, the millions of dead. Then she thought about who humanity wanted to be. "Because we're not like you," she said simply. "We don't conquer, we don't enslave. We defend, and when we win, we help rebuild. That's what separates us." The surrender was signed. News spread across the galaxy. The empire, which had stood for centuries, had fallen in just 1 year, defeated by a species that had never left their own solar system before the war began. Captain Ho returned to Earth a hero, but he did not feel like one. He thought about all the people who had died under his command. The victories felt hollow when weighed against the losses. He visited the memorial built in Seoul, a massive wall with the names of everyone who died in the war, millions of names. He found the section for his original crew from the lunar platform, 157 names. Friends, colleagues, people he had laughed with and fought beside. "We won," he said quietly to the wall. "I hope it was worth it." Retired from combat flying, she became an instructor, teaching the next generation of pilots. On her first day, a young student asked her what the war was like. "Terrifying," admitted. "Every day I thought I would die. Every battle I said goodbye to the people I loved. But we kept fighting because the alternative was worse. Remember that. Sometimes you have to be brave not because you want to, but because you have no other choice." Sung Min continued his work as an engineer. He helped rebuild the destroyed cities, using both human and technology. The two species began cooperating, slowly building trust. It would take generations to heal the wounds, but the process had started. Became a diplomat, helping establish communication protocols with the newly freed species. She discovered she was good at building bridges between different cultures. The galaxy was a bigger place than anyone had imagined, and humans were just beginning to explore it. Admiral Wu retired after the war. He was offered a position as Secretary General of the United Nations but declined. He had seen enough of war and politics. He wanted to spend his remaining years in peace. Dr. One became humanity's first ambassador to the Galactic Council, a new organization formed by the freed species. Her message to the galaxy was simple: cooperation, not conquest; mutual aid, not domination. The species that survived would be those that worked together. Years passed. The war became history, then legend. Children born after the war learned about it in school. The story seemed impossible. How could humans with primitive weapons and no experience in space warfare defeat a galactic empire? But those who had been there knew the truth. Humanity had won not because they were strong, but because they refused to give up. They won because they adapted faster than anyone expected. They won because when faced with extinction, they became creative, desperate, and terrifyingly effective. The galaxy learned a new lesson, one that was written into every history book, taught in every military academy across 100 worlds. Never underestimate humans. Never assume they will surrender. Never think you know their limits. Because when you corner humanity, when you threaten their homes and families, they don't break. They fight back. And they don't stop until they win. They had learned this lesson too late, but the rest of the galaxy learned from this mistake. Earth became not a target for conquest, but an ally to respect. The species that once knew nothing of space warfare became teachers, protectors, and friends to the freed worlds. And in the night sky above Earth, Captain Ho sometimes looked up at the stars and remembered the fear, the courage, the desperate battles, remembered the friends lost and the victory won. He remembered what it meant to be human, to face impossible odds and fight anyway, to adapt, to learn, to never surrender. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy, not weapons or technology or military tactics, but hope, the hope that even the weakest can defeat the strong, that freedom is worth fighting for, that no empire, no matter how powerful, is truly invincible. They tried to subjugate humanity. They thought it would be easy. They thought humans were just another weak species. It didn't end well. For them,